Hey everyone, it's Angie Coley, and today I wanted to talk to you about a new little experiment that I want to run, which is back in the day, it took me about 6 months to work up the courage, make all the plans, do all the steps before I actually wound up leaving my day job and starting my side hustle. So this thought occurred to me a while back. If I could take you through 6 months of just internal exercises and business exercises, would you feel ready to start that business that you've been dreaming of or launch that new product that you've been thinking of? So this is specifically geared for newer entrepreneurs who are really interested in leaving a day job and figuring out that mindset shift that comes from going from employee to business owner. And it's a totally different way of thinking, but I think if you are a little further along the path of entrepreneurship, you've been at this for a few years, or you're an experienced business owner, you're still going to get a lot out of this, because this is not just planning and strategy and how to get more business, how to get more revenue. There's a lot of what's happening in between your ears too, because you've got to get right with what's happening in your own head before you can hope to get out there and start a business and help people in the world, right? So 6 months starts today, and the very first thing that I want to talk about is anxiety spirals, because this is the number one killer that I see that will stop a business dead in its tracks well before it even starts, because you're just thinking too much, and not everything that you're thinking or imagining is actually true or based in reality. A lot of it is hyped up by media, by what we see in movies, by things that we've heard from other people that, we don't really know the entire journey and all the steps that they've taken, but we definitely hear the outcome and kind of apply our own filters to it, and then imagine that all these horrible things can happen to us, right? So I've noticed 5 main types of anxiety spirals and loops where your brain just kind of gets stuck on repeat and you're never actually solving anything, but you're worrying a lot. That happens. It happens to all of us. And there are 5 of them. I want to introduce you to these concepts. I want to show you how to recognize them, what they sound like when they start up in your head. And I want to tell you how to short circuit them so that you can start to move forward again. Whenever and these are still tricks. These are tricks that I've picked up along the way on my path to entrepreneurship, but that I still use to this day. And I coach other people to use these as well. And no, I'm not a therapist, or I'm not proclaiming any kind of diagnosis. This is just stuff that has really, really helped me get past all the doubts and the anxieties and the fears and keep moving forward despite that. So regardless of what anybody tells you, I am not in fact fearless. I am probably one of the most anxious people that you will ever meet. And so I actively look for solutions that will help me feel the fear, process it, and then move on. So here we go. It's a bit of a long intro, but here we go. 5 different anxiety loops that you could get stuck in, how to recognize them, and how to break them. Spiral number 1, the 2-step. It sounds like, if I do this, then maybe that. Well, if I send a direct mail letter promoting my business, then maybe this business owner will call and yell at me, or maybe they'll laugh at me, or maybe they'll put me on a blacklist and I'll never be able to work in this town again. If that sounds familiar to you, you're doing the old 2-step. And the way that I have found to short circuit this actually came from an old roommate of mine when I was doing this kind of dance with an ex-boyfriend of mine. We were having a bit of an argument, and I was thinking, well, if I say this and then he does that and then I do that, and I was puzzling through all of this out loud. And my roommate looked at me and said, "Angie, you can't make him dance the way you want him to." And it was in that moment that I realized that, I can't control this entire situation. I can only control me. So if you're stuck in the 2-step, if you hear yourself going, if I do this, then maybe that, and kind of scripting out a whole sitcom pilot in your head, stop, breathe, realize that you can only control your part of it. The other person or company or entity, whoever it is that you're dealing with, is an entirely different person that will handle things in an entirely different way from what you imagine. So you can only plan what you need to say, what you need to get off your chest, what you need to do, the best thing that you have at the moment to move yourself forward, and then let all the chips fall where they may. And that's a really hard thing to get yourself to do when you're anxious and you're an overplanner like I am, but I've actually found that that has helped with letting go of anxiety because I can't control them. I can only try my best to communicate what I need and then just let the rest of it go and focus on the next thing. So don't get stuck in that two-step. You can't make anybody else dance the way you want them to. They have to agree to dance your dance. So the second one is catastrophic planning. And that is, what if I do all this work and this big catastrophe happens? I recognized this in myself when I hired my first financial planner and I was talking about putting some of my money into a riskier investment. And I asked, I think something along the lines of, would anything ever happen to make this account go empty? Because, it makes money, but it loses money, right? And I won't go into the complications there because I am far from a financial expert, but he basically looked at me and said, well, the only way that this account would ever go to zero or shrink by that much is if the stock market crashed. And if that happens, then you'd have bigger things to worry about. And it sounds a little bit callous, but it's true. If for some reason you've been planning a business and then, an earthquake happens in your town, you've got bigger things to worry about than your business. And your business will be something that you can focus on again once your life returns to normal. But you don't have to have a catastrophic plan in place in case of meteor, in case of bus crash, in case of terrorist attack, in case of tornado spawned by a hurricane and both of them land on your town at the same time. These are just, I don't want to minimize them. I don't want to sound callous and say that these things don't happen and they aren't devastating. But realize that you can't live your life anticipating the worst like that all the time, because then you're just going to be down in a bunker, not doing anything, worrying when the big one is going to happen and come take you out. So remember that whenever you start to recognize yourself like, what if this big emergency situation happens? Well, then your priorities change. Your priorities shift into survival. You get through the hard time, and then you can shift back into business planning mode and business building mode. That's the way people have done it for generation upon generation upon generation to get to where we are today. So recognize that catastrophic thinking and planning isn't actually moving you forward. It's keeping you stuck in fear. It's going to make you make some decisions that are based on fear that aren't necessarily smart for you. So don't operate from a place of fear and anxiety. All right. Number 3 is closely related to catastrophic planning, and that is getting stuck in a planning loop. And by that, you'll probably laugh. I'm going to be a bit jokey with this, but I've got a backup plan, and I've got a backup plan, and I've got a backup to the backup plan, and I've got a backup to the backup plan. And then in case of all that, I've got a backup to the backup plan. Do you really need all that? How likely do you think it is going to be that if you start to execute your plan, plans 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all going to fail in order so that you have to use emergency plan 6? This is not to say that I don't think that you should plan. I absolutely think that you should plan. Planning is essential in starting a business, forecasting, thinking through decisions, being strategic. But no matter how well you think this through to start, things are going to happen that, to go back to spiral 1, are out of your control, that you couldn't have predicted, that you're going to have to react to on the fly anyway. So plan for the best, plan for the worst, hope for the best, and then be willing to adapt the plan to whatever circumstances you find. So if you find yourself saying, okay, well, here are the 6 options and here's a detailed plan for all of those options, and then if option 6 happens and then this, you're starting to compound your planning loop with a 2-step, right? And you're getting sucked into this spiral. Remember, you can't plan this dance out. The likelihood that you're going to use all 6 of your backup plans is very slim. So balance your time, guard your time, recognize that planning for every possible scenario is just not possible because you have no idea what. I don't think most people had a plan for what is happening right now in the world, which is a pandemic and shutdowns and massive job loss. That was something that is a possibility. Obviously, we've seen several movies to that effect, but that doesn't necessarily mean that at any moment we were all prepared for a pandemic. So plan as best you're able and then take action. Don't let planning become your stalling tactic, that you won't move forward and take action until you feel like you've planned out every possible eventuality. Because then if something that comes along like a pandemic that wasn't in any of your planning and destroys everything, you're just going to feel extra special bad. Why didn't I see that? You're going to start piling on yourself. So do yourself a favor, create a plan, maybe have a backup plan, and then get moving, because action is going to tell you a hell of a lot more than planning for every eventuality. All right, here's one of my favorites, and I think a lot of you are going to recognize this. Number 4, arguing with someone else in your own head. And my favorite place to argue with other people in my head is in the shower. That's usually when I'll come up with my best dialogue, where I'm just like, I'm killing it, and like every point that I'm making, they can't help but listen to, and then I slam in that creative one-liner or that insult that just makes them back down, and everybody's cheering for me, and all of that just happened in my own head. The reality is, when I present that argument, I could literally script out every line, like we talked about, plan for every eventuality, and they could say something totally unexpected that throws my entire careful plan out the window. They're not going to dance the way I want them to. They're not going to reply the way I planned. So all I can do, going back to what I've said a couple times, is make sure that I have prepared what I need to say, and trusting that I have developed enough filtering mechanisms, safeguards, to keep the people around me at such a level as to where if I can communicate a need, they can talk to me without getting offended, and we can figure out how to move forward because we both care about that relationship. But I don't argue with someone else in my head. It kind of is a natural default pattern. I still find myself falling into these arguments, but usually whenever I hear myself, I'll say this, and then she'll say that, and then I'll say this, and then she'll say that, and everybody's going to be like, yeah, obviously Angie was right. As much as I'd love that to be true, whenever I hear that happening in my head, I say, you're fighting with yourself again. This is not productive. This is not actually going to help you. This is not the way it's going to play out. This is just a fantasy. So stop fighting with yourself. Prepare what you want to say to them, and then let what will be, will be. All right. And then the final one is, a lot of us are list builders, right? We think in terms of lists, tasks that we've got to do, places we've got to be, people we've got to check back in with, emails to reply to. Checking things off a list feels really good. There is a subset where this could be dangerous, and that is listing all the reasons that this plan that you've created, this business that you're dreaming of, couldn't work. Laugh if you must, but it is something that people do, I think, out of natural instinct to want to protect themselves. But the thing is, that's a very lopsided pendulum. And if you are going to go through all the exercises of thinking through why this can't possibly work for you, then I'm going to challenge you to swing the pendulum the other way and think through all the reasons that this could actually work for you, all the things that you've got going for you, right? Don't resist the urge to catastrophize, to get stuck in this dark hole, this dark corner where everybody else can succeed and you can't. And remember that everybody that's built a business, almost everybody that's built a business or has done something that you want to do, has faced all 5 of these exact same things, sometimes in a repeating order, sometimes all stacked on top of each other. I know I've been through it, but you can go through all of these things and still proceed forward and build something successful that you're proud to call your own. So that's what I've got for you. Just a quick recap. The 2-step where you're saying, if I do this, then that will happen. You can't make other people dance the way you want them to. You can't predict every possible scenario. If a catastrophe happens, if you're planning for catastrophes like natural disasters, remember that if in the event that happens, survival mode engages. Business planning, it's okay to put that on pause, get through surviving, and then come back to business planning when you're at a better mental space. But don't go into your business planning for having to deal with a Mad Max scenario. That's just not going to help you, and it's not very realistic for the moment. Planning loop, where you're creating backup plans. You can't see every potential scenario, so at some point it's got to be good enough to go. And then you're going to have to react on the fly, and that's how business owners think and operate, and that's why they're at a higher pay grade than most employees. Arguing with someone else in your head. Stop it. You can't control them. You can't puppet master them into replying the way that you want them to so that your script goes perfectly. This isn't a sitcom. This isn't the writer's room. They're not going to act it out the way you envision. So don't get into arguments in your head. And listing all the reasons that this thing you're trying to do won't work. Make sure that if you're going to go through that mental exercise, that you're going through all the reasons that this could possibly work as well. See if your perspective is as balanced as it may sound. And your brain, if you're listing all the reasons that it couldn't work, could be perfectly logical. You could be not beating yourself up or feeling horrible at all, but this is a fear-based reaction if you're focused on all the reasons that it can't work. That's you protecting yourself. That's your brain doing its job. Your brain's job is to protect you from what it perceives to be mortal danger. And your brain interprets, I want to start a business. The business might not work as, well, then I'm going to wind up under a bridge, homeless, being eaten by feral cats. That's not necessarily true. There are a lot of people out there that want to help you succeed as a business owner that need what you have to offer. So don't get stuck in that trap of thinking that this can't possibly work. Hundreds of thousands of people have done it before you. All you've got to do is figure out how it works for you. So that was a little bit of a long video for today, but I hope it helps. If you got some value out of it, please share with somebody that may need to see this today. And let's go kick some ass.